We are in Jones Hill Woods, a wonderful, beautiful ancient woodland that inspired Roald Dahl to write the fantastic Mr. Fox. It's also, being an ancient woodland, a repository of wildlife. Beautiful, beautiful biodiversity here. Today is the first day that HS2's bat licenses come into force. Natural England issued the licenses 2 days ago, and it's very, very disappointing to hear. Back in October, we had a wonderful win here. We stopped HS2 in their tracks from felling this beautiful woodland. It was only a temporary stop. The stop was an illegal issue. HS2 were quite blatantly going to walk in here and fell the wood without any licensing, and it was going to be quite illegal. What they needed to be legal was to get the right licenses in place. Despite all the information that we have been feeding into Natural England, and despite all the information that we've been feeding to HS2, and despite all the questions we've been asking of both, we have actually had some engagement from Natural England. We've had no engagement from HS2. Despite all that, Natural England issued licenses to HS2 to deal with the bats in this wood. Those licenses allow HS2 to disturb, kill, move, transport those bats as they see fit. It is standard practice. These licenses are standard practice, except this license is far from standard. You know, there's a nest up there.
Yeah, there's a bird's nest up there.
You shouldn't really be going near a nest. The amount of information that we have that makes it an illegitimate license is this high. We are working very hard to get this into court. It's very, very difficult. We are hoping that HS2 will not be felling over the Easter holiday. Raising a judge to raise an injunction over Easter bank holiday is going to be well nigh impossible. We're very nervous, we're full of trepidation. We know we're right, we know we have all the evidence that is required to stop this. But we need to be able to make a judge listen, and that's the real hurdle. If we get one who is compliant, then we will stop this work and we will save this wood for another day, a very long day. National England work under desperately difficult conditions. I know they're seriously underfunded. But what's happened with these licenses, this license application from HS2 is, 1, Natural England virtually rewrote it for them so that it could be passed. 2, the information that we have on the species that are here, the Bar-pastel bat, for instance, there is no mitigation available for Bar-pastel bats, and yet Natural England have included Bar-pastel bat on this license and saying that HS2 can move them, translocate them, do whatever they wish. They can kill them in the name of HS2. Surveys that HS2 have done, and they have found 12 bats in this wood. I'm sorry, there are a lot more bats than that in this wood, but they found 12 in roosts over winter. Bats roost in all sorts of different places when they're hibernating. So all they found were the bats that were here to hibernate, because they only did a winter survey. They have done no emergent surveys of the bats coming out of the roosts, so they really cannot count how many bats there are in this wood. The surveys deny the fact that the whole wood, you can't see where the lights are, but there's a chain of lights that runs down through behind me, and it lights up the whole wood every night from before dusk to after dawn. I'll give you a little idea of what's happening here. This fence down here is a fence that was erected when we were evicted back in October. If you see the fence over there, that is the fence that HS2 are allowed to work within, that side of it. They're allowed to be on that side of it, but they've been on this side since October, trampling everything, and they've been putting a festoon of very bright lights all the way through, and they've got security tents and security outposts all the way up and down through the wood. And yesterday the ecologists were going around knocking up bat boxes. I don't know if you can see that one on that tree just behind me there. And it's right beside a security camp, a security tent, so it's noisy. It's got flashing flashlights at it all night long, making noisy conversation, laughing all night long. There's a generator just on the opposite side of that tent. There are the lights underneath that bat box, and that bat box is put there as mitigation for the bats that are going to be unhomed in that bit of wood over there. They're not going to want to come here. That is not mitigation. That does not stand up as mitigation. And all the last 6 months, these guys have been trampling over this land without any right to do so. So the guy who owns this land has been defrauded out of his land by a land agent who works for him but is paid for by HS2. Tell me, Barrett, what is this about? Now I see some bigwigs down there. I don't know what they're up to, but they're just, they have no idea of what they're doing. Their plans are just so irredeemably screwed, and they're doing everything wrong. They cannot do anything right. But it's an act of Parliament, so we have to believe that it's all hunky-dory and it's all perfectly right and being done perfectly well. No, it's not. Not at all. No way can any of those surveys be valid, because so much has been driven away or been held, imprisoned in their roosts in these beautiful trees. It's just not a valid license. Half the land that they have fenced off down there does not belong to HS2. It says on the maps, on the consolidated plans in the Act of Parliament, that they do not own half the land that they have been trampling over, destroying all the undergrowth, and yet today I see they've been doing some felling of the understory in that land that they do not own. And they're using that land to put up bat boxes as supposed mitigation for the bats in the wood, and yet those bats include barbastel, which will not use bat boxes. The license is invalid. We have to try and tell a judge that the license is invalid. We have to tell the judge that a government advisory body is not doing its job. That is a really big ask. So up in this tree here you see a bat box. That is basically there supposedly as a new home for the bats that are going to be flying from the woodland behind. The area of woodland behind is the area that's going to be felled. What we hope they will do, the least worst case scenario if they are felling, is they'll send a climber up. He will look to see if there are any bats in there. If there are any bats in there, he will put a one-way gate onto the roost, and that will be left for at least one night. If he goes up and he doesn't find any bats, he comes down, they fell the tree immediately. They don't get much chance. They really don't get much chance. Those licenses are licenses to kill. The bats will not survive. Who's given the bat any directions to get to a little bat box like that? This is something that's just brand new in their territory. They've never seen it before. They've no reason to suspect that that's a home. It's been put there, it'll be smelling of human, it'll be smelling of new fresh wood. It's not a home for a bat. Natural England have provided the guidelines. They get their guidelines from the Bat Conservation Trust. But in actual fact, if you follow what Bat Conservation Trust say about mitigating for felling a woodland like this, HS2 have fallen way, way below the mark. They just have not come anywhere near decent, law-abiding practice. Not fit for purpose. Absolutely not fit for purpose. Natural England have already issued an answer to complaints. Within one day, they were getting so many complaints that they have put out a blog. We need much, much, much more complaints. There are various places where you can get the information that you need to complain. There will be information on the Save Roald Dahl Woods Facebook page, but you need to complain to Natural England, and you need to complain to all the wildlife trusts, all the RSPB, Chris Packham, everybody. You need to tell everybody that this is what Natural England are doing and is not acceptable. And you write to your MP. You write and you write and you write to your MP. You do not let your MP come back with any stupid, asinine remark that comes from HS2. You need a reply from your MP.